Tonight on Reporting Scotland, Jeremy Corbyn is in Scotland to outline his vision for the economy as the row over anti-Semitism in the Labour Party continues. Union leaders accuse Aberdeen City Council of a catastrophic failure after 25 people were potentially exposed to asbestos at an Aberdeen school. The parents of a woman who fell to her death from a balcony in Spain say 5 men who were in the apartment at the time still haven't told them what they know.
And that doesn't help us. It doesn't show any respect to us. It's disrespectful to us. It's only prolonging the agony for us. Why would these men do that?
The men have denied any involvement in what happened and say their names have been dragged through the mud. Also coming up in the programme. It's another boom year for tourism, but is the success of some sites becoming a turn-off, not just for local people, but for visitors themselves? And Kenny Miller leaves his role as player-manager at Livingston after just 2 games. Good evening. The UK Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has begun a 4-day tour of Scotland, outlining a plan to boost manufacturing industry. But his visit coincides with more questions about anti-Semitism in the party. One former Labour minister told BBC Scotland that Mr Corbyn, while not himself anti-Semitic, enabled such views to persist in the party. Mr Corbyn told us there was absolutely no room for anti-Semitism in Labour. Here's our political editor, Brian Taylor.
On the buses, Jeremy Corbyn visits the Alexander Dennis factory in Falkirk, promising to change gear from a focus on service industries to support for manufacturing. Conservative critics say Labour plans would bankrupt Britain with uncontrolled spending and high taxation. Mr Corbyn says he'd push up state borrowing, but that we'd see a real return.
But I tell you this, what we've had now is 8 years of austerity. What we've had is 10 years of frozen wages. What we have is a decline in our economic basis as a result of that. You cannot cut your way to prosperity. The only road to prosperity that I understand is investing for the future.
But the SNP challenged Labour to support the European single market.
If we go through with the plans with a Tory hard Brexit that the Labour are backing at the moment, it'll cost us tens of thousands of jobs in Scotland alone, lead to years of austerity.
But Jeremy Corbyn's visit coincides with a new row over anti-Semitism in his party. Former Scottish Labour MP Jim Sheridan has been suspended as the party checks claims that he made anti-Semitic comments on social media. Former Labour Minister Tom Harris says Jeremy Corbyn has a problem.
Because of the circles that he has moved in for 30 years, he has attracted people who are anti-Semitic. And he's very tolerant of that. You know, he is an enabler of anti-Semitism rather than a practitioner of it.
And the Scottish Tories deputy leader says Labour must do more.
I'm the representative for 40% of Scotland's Jewish population. They're not just angry now, they're genuinely afraid.
Mr Corbyn told me he backs the international definition of anti-Semitism, but not every example included in that definition, believing that could constrain criticism of Israeli policies.
There has to be that space for debate. You cannot shut that down, but it must never, ever be conducted in an anti-Semitic way.
And for emphasis, he insisted that anti-Semitism remained very rare inside Labour and completely unacceptable. Brian Taylor, Reporting Scotland.
Well, tonight, Mr Corbyn is taking part in an event at the Edinburgh Book Festival, and our political correspondent Glenn Campbell is there. Glenn, the Labour leader's message in recent weeks continues to be overshadowed by this row over anti-Semitism.
Yes, it has become a running sore, as Gordon Brown, the former party leader and Prime Minister, put it here at the Book Festival last week. I'm sure that when Jeremy Corbyn appears at this event this evening, he'll want to talk about anything but anti-Semitism when he appears alongside the former Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis to discuss the future of the left, the future of socialism. Jeremy Corbyn certainly knows that if he is to make a breakthrough and to win power from the Conservatives at a future UK general election, he needs a resurgence for Labour in Scotland, needs to win back key seats from the SNP, but it's hard for him to focus on his message and his policies when this row over anti-Semitism continues. The party says it is looking again at its code of conduct and what form that should take, with growing calls, not least from within the Labour Party, for it to adopt in full the international definition of anti-Semitism and all its examples. We expect to hear more on that from the party within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you very much, Glenn Campbell. It's been revealed that 25 people were allowed into a school in Aberdeen after asbestos was disturbed there because of a series of failures in dealing with the incident. A council investigation has revealed a line manager forgot about the incident at Bridge of Dawn Academy for 5 days. Well, our reporter Rebecca Curran is outside the school tonight. Rebecca.
Yes, Jackie. Well, this redacted report obtained by BBC Scotland does not make for comfortable reading for Aberdeen City Council. It details failures before and after the asbestos was disturbed last month. Now, BBC Scotland previously revealed that 1 worker and 2 janitors were potentially exposed. This report suggests that many more people could have been too. Now, asbestos can be safely removed from a building. In this instance, it was not. And given this is a harmful substance that can lead to terminal illness decades down the line, serious questions are being asked this evening.
Asbestos was disturbed in this school during maintenance work last month. In the days that followed, there were a series of serious failures. It prompted an Aberdeen City Council investigation, and the outcome is damning. The report reveals there was no emergency response as a line manager forgot about the incident for 5 days. In that time, 25 people were allowed into the school, including teachers, janitors, cleaners and other workers. It says the site was not safe as the area had not been correctly decontaminated and isolated to prevent access by other users of the building.
It's damning, shocking and appalling. This is the type of behaviour we would have expected from cowboy contractors over the years, not from a local authority like Aberdeen City Council. You know, we've been told that over the past year that there's a whole restructure in the council, the new managerial approach and all the rest of it. Nothing's changed as far as we're concerned here.
Last week, Aberdeen City Council admitted asbestos found at a second city school was removed without proper procedures being followed. It's led to fresh calls for the harmful material to be removed from all of Scotland's schools.
If a landmine was found in a school playground, would you not take notice and remove it? Well, it's the very same dangers that is caused by asbestos exposure. People can die in the future. We have people who have been exposed at school and sadly they have passed away. The only problem is the latency period is between 20 and 50 years. So it means that you cannot tell now what's going to happen in the future.
Pupils will return to both schools this week after the summer holidays. Meanwhile, the report recommends refresher training to increase knowledge and understanding of the dangers of asbestos.
Aberdeen City Council declined to take part in an interview on camera today. It did release a statement saying the health and safety of everyone in its schools is a top priority. Now, this incident is also being investigated by the Health and Safety Executive, but the overwhelming suggestion is that this could all have been avoided had the proper procedures been followed from start to finish.
Thank you very much, Rebecca Curran. 3 siblings are suing the Church of Scotland after being sexually abused by a care home worker. The 2 men and a woman were attacked repeatedly by Ian Sampson at Lord and Lady Polwarth Children's House in Edinburgh. The girl was forced to have an abortion after Sampson raped her. Sampson was jailed in 2013 for 14 years after being found guilty of 22 serious sexual offences between the 1970s and 1990s. 8 of these offences happened at the Kirk Run care home. Relatives of a woman who fell to her death from a 10th floor balcony in Spain have accused 5 men from Nottingham of prolonging their agony by not telling them what they know. Kirsty Maxwell from West Lothian died shortly after entering an apartment which was occupied by the men, all of whom have denied any responsibility for her death. The case has been investigated for a documentary to be screened on BBC One Scotland tonight. Graham Stewart reports.
Kirsty Maxwell was celebrating a hen do in Benidorm. The 27-year-old from Livingston returned to her apartment with friends in the early hours. She was filmed apparently asleep and the front door was bolted shut. What's unexplained is how just an hour later she fell from a 10th floor balcony on the floor above at the opposite end of the building. That apartment was occupied by 5 men from Nottingham. One of them was arrested on suspicion of homicide but released without charge. The other 4 volunteered to be questioned in court from their own lawyer, as was their legal right.
I was in the living room drinking with Daniel and Joseph. I was woken by Daniel to tell me there was a girl in the bathroom.
What were you doing on the night that these things happened?
Sleeping.
How do you know that the girl jumped?
Because Joe shouted the girl's jump.
Following the court hearing, a statement on behalf of the 4 men said this was a tragic accident and we categorically deny any involvement. They offered their deepest sympathy to Kirsty's family and said we've had our names dragged through the mud and used in a derogatory manner throughout this process through no fault of our own. Kirsty's family say they just want proper answers.
They had the chance to talk before and we felt, this is great, they're going across there, they're going to speak. And as it turned out, they went across and just basically says, no comment, we're not talking to your lawyer. What was the point of doing that? And that doesn't help us. That doesn't show any respect to us. It's disrespectful to us. It's only prolonging the agony for us. Why would these men do that?
Not satisfied with the Spanish authorities' investigation, they've employed retired detective David Swindle to re-examine the case.
Can we come in and see just now?
But even accessing the apartment from which Kirsty fell proved difficult.
I would want to look at where the CCTV cameras are, to see the layout in the corridor where Kirsty was before she died, and importantly, room 10E, where that is, and look at where Kirsty fell to the ground and look at the pool area too. We don't know this information.
In tonight's documentary, Mr. Swindle speaks to a specialist who investigates balcony deaths.
I believe she was facing into the room at the point that she lost balance or lost her grip and then dropped vertically initially before she interacted with features on the building. How that loss of balance or loss of grip occurred, that's not something I can hypothesise on. Brings up more questions than answers.
Spanish police say Kirsty's case is still open and authorities are still awaiting the results of DNA tests. Graham Stewart, reporting Scotland.
And you can see more on that investigation in Killed Abroad tonight on BBC One Scotland at 9 o'clock. It's 19 minutes to 7. A reminder now of tonight's top story. Amid rising concern over anti-Semitism in his party, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn begins a 4-day tour of Scotland outlining a plan to boost the manufacturing industry. And still to come, could an Ayrshire village be this year's inductee to the Scottish Football Hall of Fame? The holidays are over for some, but this remains an exceptionally busy time for Scotland's tourism industry, and it's another boom year. But can we get too much of a good thing? Is the success of some sites in the height of summer becoming a turn-off, not just for local people, but for visitors themselves? Our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser, has joined the crowds to find out.
This is how we do it. Take the land back castle by castle.
Released today, the trailer for the latest Scots history blockbuster, Outlaw King, about Robert the Bruce. Another draw for set jet travellers eager to see where films are made, including Doune Castle near Stirling. Narrow Doune roads are already jammed with fans of the TV series Outlander. Unhappy neighbours see little local business benefit.
A lot of them come in and just photograph it and go. So there's a constant stream. There isn't space for them all to be in the village and walk about and go for a cup of tea. It's not big enough.
Amid economic uncertainty, this is one sector that's doing nicely, unless you just want to get home from work.
Edinburgh Festival is a fantastic thing. You know, it brings people all around the world to Edinburgh. But a lot of the locals, when they go into town, they just find it you know, quite difficult and a bit of a pain.
You need to control the way that people go to sleep in your town. Now with Airbnb and places like this, all the houses are for tourists, not for the local people.
This so-called over-tourism is becoming more of a political issue. It's fueling resistance in hotspots of tourism across Europe, like Barcelona and Venice and Mallorca, increasingly here in Edinburgh as well, on the Isle of Skye, in the road around the north and west of the Highlands. They're stretching the capacity for visitors right to the limit. Scenic roads can be the attraction, but they're not designed for the recent rapid growth in traffic.
The planners, the politicians, government in general have not thought this out carefully. They have not planned ahead, and all the chickens have come home to roost in the last couple of years.
Edinburgh, it's not Venice, not yet, but tourism experts see a risk.
That's the tension with over-tourism. People are looking for an authentic experience, but what they're getting is sort of a city as a theme park. The entertainment economy has taken hold, and therefore there's getting to be less and less of everyday life going on in city centres.
The industry doesn't want such tensions to become clear to visitors.
There are plenty of places in Scotland that have more than enough capacity to accept tourism. There's lots of times of the year when we need more visitors, and I think we've got to bear in mind that our economy benefits greatly.
It's in our stories.
Visit Scotland, the government agency, says one answer is mining the wealth of data on individual tourists to cater to what they want and to target those who offer higher value. And councils, led by the one in the capital, want revenue from a tourist tax. Already paying VAT, the industry is far from persuaded. Douglas Fraser, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
The latest strike action by workers on 3 North Sea oil platforms is underway. Members of the Unite Union, who work on Total's Alwyn, Elgin and Dunbar structures, are unhappy at proposals to change their conditions, including a move to a 3-week on, 3-week off rota. Further talks are planned for later this week, but the union has warned of more stoppages if an agreement can't be reached. Total says the long-term sustainability of its North Sea business is at stake unless changes are made. A new fraud prevention scheme involving Police Scotland and the banking industry claims to have stopped people being conned out of more than £1.5 million in its first 5 months. The banking protocol kicks in if bank staff notice a customer seeking to withdraw or transfer a sum of money which appears unusual for them. Around 250 calls were made in the first 5 months of the programme, leading to a number of arrests. Football now, and newly promoted Premiership side Livingston are looking for a new manager just 7 weeks after appointing Kenny Miller. The former Rangers and Scotland player left the club after a disagreement over his role as player-manager. Alistair Lamont can tell us more.
From the outside looking in, at least, it seemed more or less a day like any other at Livingston. But as the players went about their business, one man was conspicuous by his absence, Kenny Miller. After losing what turned out to be his final match in charge against Motherwell on Saturday, things quickly unravelled. Livingston said this morning the player-manager role wasn't working and we'd requested that Kenny reverted to a full-time manager's role. Kenny, however, feels that he isn't ready to give up his football career. The players he leaves behind were unwilling to comment as they left this afternoon, and Miller himself has yet to have his say, but only last week said this.
Listen, football, you move on, and I've got a job that I'm thoroughly enjoying, really looking forward to the challenges that are going to come up over the season and willing to face them head on, as always.
The particular challenge he faces now may not be one he anticipated so soon. It's been quite an introduction to football management.
Looking back in hindsight and probably thinking he's better away from it, that's probably what he's learned, that when he does take another position as a manager, he needs to think long and hard about where it is and what are the circumstances surrounding the club. And I think that's what he'll take from this, rather than anything technical from within in a managerial role. I think it will be more about selection of the position that he takes at what club.
Potential candidates may look at events of the last 24 hours and wonder how attractive a proposition that really is. Alistair Lamont, reporting Scotland.
Well, meanwhile, the nominations for this year's inductees into the Scottish Football Hall of Fame are now all in, with the shortlist being announced soon. Previously, great figures from the game, such as managers and players, have been recognised. But this year, could a Scottish village be given the honour? Jane Lewis explains.
Once a thriving coal mining community, but no longer. Today, the Ayrshire village of Glenbuck lies empty. A population of just over 1,500 worked and lived here, but the quarries are closed, the houses gone. But the village of Glenbuck hasn't been forgotten, thanks to a famous footballing link. Bill Shankly, the legendary manager who revived the fortunes of Liverpool, was arguably Glenbuck's most famous son. The memorial in the village pays tribute to his Anfield achievements. And while Shankly himself is in the Scottish Football Hall of Fame, a group has been campaigning to ensure his birthplace is included too.
Bill Shankly was born here, he played football here, he played football with his brothers here, then he took what he learnt and took it to Liverpool and made them great, absolutely great. So if it wasn't for him being here and learning what he learnt here, Liverpool wouldn't be what they were today.
He'll be looking down today and saying, go on, get it into the Hall of Fame. I'm sure he will, I'm sure he will. But for himself, that he was in the Hall of Fame, he wouldn't have been fussy if he was in that, but he would say, yes, for my friends.
As well as being Shankly's birthplace, Glenbuck had another claim to fame.
The famous pitch there, did it have a bit of a slope, did it?
Yeah, a bit of a slope, and there are actually stones in the pitch as well.
Its local football club, the Glenbuck Cherry Pickers, unearthed some extraordinary talent, producing 54 professional footballers.
Bill Shankly says the hardest cup in the world to win was the FA Cup, and 4 Scottish players from Glenbuck lifted that cup. The players are breathtaking stories as well. Played with Aberdeen, Kilmarnock, Celtic, Rangers, Sunderland, players Manchester City, big teams.
Its footballing heritage can't be questioned. Whether this village deserves a place in the Scottish Football Hall of Fame will be revealed in October. Jane Lewis, reporting Scotland.
Dinosaur footprints have been found preserved in rocks on the Scottish mainland for the first time, according to a leading paleontologist. Dr. Neil Clark, who is the Vice President of the Geological Society of Glasgow, discovered the prints at a coastal location near Inverness. Previously, dinosaur footprints have only been recorded in Skye. The new fossils may have been left by dinosaurs about 170 million years ago. Chelsea Clinton has made an appearance at the Edinburgh International Book Festival. The daughter of former President Bill Clinton and presidential candidate Hillary addressed the issue of women's rights and launched her latest book for children. Our arts correspondent Pauline McLean met her.
She grew up in the White House, surrounded by stories of power and politics. Now, a mum herself, Chelsea Clinton is a campaigner for equal rights, not least through her books for children, the latest of which she launched at the Edinburgh International Book Festival.
How we change that kind of requires a shift in norms and expectations, and I think some of that starts with the stories we tell our children, not only our girls but also our boys.
13 women have changed this year.
This latest picture book tells the stories of 13 women around the world who persisted in their ambitions. They were chosen from more than 200 stories, and there could have been so many more.
2 women that I've always looked up to the most in my life have been my grandmother and my mother, both of whom have persisted over kind of unimaginable odds and yet never gave up.
Sharing stories, she says, has never been more important. And she says she's been particularly impressed with the way Scottish politicians, especially the First Minister, have been prepared to talk candidly about their experiences.
I think that's an incredibly courageous thing for her to do, to have that level of candour in public discourse. And I think we need more of that, and we should see that as a sign of strength and not remotely a sign of weakness. And I think that her candour will hopefully make it easier for more women to go kind of into politics here in Scotland and other places where women are watching her example.
Pauline McLean, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
And finally this evening, a joke that was named the funniest of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. Here's comedian Adam Rowe, who came up with it.
The joke that I won with was that I could never work in the job centre because it's got to be a tense job, knowing that you work somewhere that if you get fired, you've still got to go in the next day. I was hosting a show in Liverpool at Hot Water Comedy Club, and a guy goes to me, like, I'm asking people what they do for a living and stuff, and he said he worked in the job centre, and I came up with it there and then. So about a week ago, my agent rang me and he said, "You've won best joke of the Fringe," and I didn't believe him. I just said, "No, I haven't. I don't win things like that." And he said, "Oh, yes, you have."
Well, let's get the weather now from Christopher.
Jackie, thank you. Hello there. Well, it was a fairly quiet start to the week, at least weather-wise. Pretty dry, fairly cloudy. The odd shower, the odd bright spell. Little change through the course of this evening. Mostly dry, mostly cloudy. A few clear spells, and that will lead to the odd mist or fog patch, light winds and fairly mild. Temperatures around 9 to 13 Celsius. Now, let me just show you the Atlantic pressure sequence for tomorrow, because you'll see there's a system in the northwest likely to bring some heavy rain, but not for a good 24 hours. So for most of tomorrow, another dry one, another cloudy one, actually. Very similar, really, to today. Through the course of the day, a few light showers just moving their way eastwards, but for most of us, it should be on the dry side. And the cloud will thin and break at times to reveal some brightness, perhaps even some sunshine. Temperatures by mid-afternoon up to around 19 to 21 Celsius. If you get some sunshine, that's going to feel quite pleasant. The chance of the odd shower pushing through at times, but as I say, most of us staying dry. Best of the sunshine probably to the east of the Cairngorms, up towards the Moray Firth. Thicker cloud through the Highlands and Islands, 1 or 2 showers by this point in towards Lewis and Harris. A rash in towards parts of Orkney, and Shetland reasonably dry. And then the change, because that weather system moves its way in towards the northwest tomorrow night, bringing some heavy outbreaks of rain and crosses the country overnight. That means Wednesday starts pretty wet, but the rain clears. So after a soggy start on Wednesday, the rain clears and there'll be some brightness around, 1 or 2 showers, quite a breezy day from the southwest, and a much fresher feeling day as well. Temperatures by mid-afternoon around the mid-teens for many. And looking ahead towards the end of the week, well, weather systems moving their way eastwards across the country, but it's a northwesterly, and that introduces some much fresher air. So a cooler feeling a couple of days. And there'll be a number of showers around, certainly through Thursday and Friday. Some of those showers heavy, merging together at times, the odd rumble of thunder, some brightness or sunshine out with them. But as I say, a fresh feel, highs of 15 degrees at best. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you very much, Christopher. And now a reminder of tonight's main news. A state of crisis in Birmingham Prison. The government moves to take it over from the private firm G4S. Inspectors found blood and vomit on the floor, sleeping staff, and an overpowering smell of drugs. The Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has begun a 4-day tour of Scotland, outlining a plan to boost manufacturing industry. But his visit coincides with more questions about anti-Semitism in the party. And that is Reporting Scotland. I'll be back with our late bulletin at 10:30. Join me for that if you can. Until then, from all the team, goodbye.